You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is another Thursday evening and time for the Voice of Reason with Michael Murphy, your host. I thought about not even doing the show this week because there's just nothing to talk about. Yeah, right. Actually, I did not do the show last week. Had a very good reason. My wife of 36 years has had a tough time with her knees, and so we had scheduled on the 31st, which is a week ago yesterday, to have a double knee replacement. And a lot of people say, holy cow, doing both of them at once, I could never do that. And maybe you couldn't. I don't know. I've never had knee replacement. I've had knee surgery. I know it's quite painful. I'm not sure. I know she had a tough time in the first few days, but she's a rock star. She went to physical therapy yesterday. And the therapist said, well, let's try something. You're doing so well. Let's try something. So she took her walker away from her, and she had her walk without a walker. She walked forward. She walked backwards. She walked sideways. She stood on one leg. She stood on the other leg. She did stairs up and down. She got on an exercise bicycle, did not go round and round, just kind of rocked back and forth to kind of work on that, you know, the movement all. Anyway, I know that's not why you are paying, that's not why you dialed in or downloaded or whatever the show, but I thought you'd like to know that she's done very, very well. And the biggest problem we had was with the opioid painkillers. She was just feeling sick, feeling awful. Of course, it binds you up. You get constipated. She was nauseous. She was just felt generally awful. And I finally said, you know, we've got to do something different. This isn't working. And I called a good friend of mine. Shout out to Scott. Hello, Scott. Called Scott and said, hey, I'm thinking about getting her off these drugs. I'm looking at going with either Tylenol and aspirin or Tylenol and ibuprofen. What would you recommend? And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Give that a shot. So she says she has a little bit of problem. Every 6 hours we give her the medication, and she says about that last hour it starts kind of hurting and bothering her a little bit, but by and large it's worked fairly well, and she is acting and feeling so much better outside of the away from the narcotic drugs that she's certainly glad that she made the switch. So anyway, kudos to Janice, and way to go, gal. Love you. Okay, let's move on to some stories. First of all, I'm going to start off with kind of a feel-good story. I saw this on a show earlier today, and I thought I'd share it with you. And you could probably Google it. I think it's on. I think one place I saw it is the Blaze website. I think they have it where you can find it. But a lot of people have gone to this deal now where you've got a security camera that's tied to like your doorknob and all, not your doorknob, your doorbell, and so you've got audio and visual. So if anybody, when they get within about 20 or 25 feet of the front door, it just comes on. and shoots a live stream to your phone or your computer, whatever. And so anyway, these folks took a look at this young man. He's 7 years old. He's riding a bicycle. He comes up to their house. As he pulls up there, he stops. The front door is recessed a little bit from the front of the house, and he stops out there because out there on the corner by that entryway is an American flag. And this 7-year-old stops and says the pledge. And then he comes and he rings the doorbell. And while he's waiting, he steps back to where he can stand there and watch the flag. And I can relate to this. I've got a couple of grandkids that their dad's in the Army, and so they've got that sense of pride for the flag and all. And I've seen some neat videos of my grandkids when they're out, like when they sound retreat in the evening. They'll stand at attention, just like the soldiers are supposed to. And I think it's cool that we've got some kids that are being taught right. We've got an awful lot that aren't, but we do have some that are. So I encourage you to look that up and go check that out. It's really a cool video. You could critique it. He doesn't get off his bicycle really when he says the pledge, but hey, most kids wouldn't even notice the flag, let alone stop and say the pledge. Another story that kind of caught my eye before we get into some of the meat. The young man was actually graduated from high school early. He graduated last December, and so he decided, since he didn't walk down the aisle with the rest of his class all like that, he decided he decided he would come home and go with his class. Well, what's he been doing since December? Well, it seems he joined the Marines. And when he said something about coming back, this is a school in Indiana. I didn't catch it's Crown Point High School, but I didn't catch the town, so I'm not really sure where this is. But anyway, Crown Point High School in Indiana. And he came back and decided that he wanted to go walk down the aisle with his fellow classmates, and he wanted to wear his dress blues. And certainly the Marine dress uniform looks very sharp. And they told him, no, you can't wear your wear your uniform at the ceremony. You can wear your cap and gown, you can walk down the aisle, but you can't wear your uniform. And he decided, well, okay, it's not that big a deal, but a bunch of his classmates said, hey, you need to go ahead and wear it. Well, he did. And he was denied admission into the facility, so he was not able to walk down the aisle with them. And while his name was on the list, his name was not read aloud or anything like that. He is a class act. He's not making a big deal about it, but a bunch of his classmates have spoken out. Anyway, just something kind of interesting. I know rules are rules and all like that, but. The young man is doing something pretty remarkable, and I don't see why it would be a big deal to let him walk down the aisle with his classmates wearing his uniform. But that's me. So there's a president named Trump and a former FBI director named James Comey, and it seems to me like they've been in the news a little bit. But I searched and I really couldn't find much about him, or maybe it's that everything I found was about Comey and Trump. One headline: Trump's lawyer accuses Comey of lying under oath as part of retaliation for being fired. Evidently, James Comey leaked that memo to a friend to give to the New York Times. I'm sorry, I grew up in a time when people are a little bit more professional, I guess. There's always been this stuff going on. Obviously, back in the 70s, we had Watergate, and we had all that stuff. And I remember saying at the time, I remember the comments being made that, well, that's just the way everybody is. That's the way it always is. The problem is that they got caught and then they denied it. And there's probably a lot of truth to that. But at least people were a little bit more professional. You know, they're a little bit more professional in their conniving and their deviation or their deviousness or whatever. And this deal of just doing stuff like this, tweeting and leaking and things like that to try to get an angle and to make points and to try to get attention and whatever else is going on. We're supposed to be a nation of integrity, a nation of people who are maybe a little smarter than the average bear. Why are we acting like 5-year-olds on the playground? I'm sorry. I was pretty dismayed when I went to CPAC this year. They had a straw poll for all the attendees. And the straw poll, one of the questions was about Trump and his tweets. I really expected people to say, he needs to tone down on the tweets, whatever like that. Something like 80% or 85%, I'd have to go back and look, but said that to either keep tweeting as much as he is or tweet more. And I was just like flabbergasted because I view this deal of sending out tweets and trying to pull stuff, out of the hat, or I don't know what he's trying to do. It drives me a little bit crazy. I guess it just doesn't seem professional. People say, well, he's a businessman, all like that. It just doesn't seem professional. I'm sorry. I personally know some politicians, some very good ones. I don't recall them ever behaving this way. This just isn't the way it's supposed to be done. I'm sorry. But we have what we have, don't we? And you've heard me talk before. I'm not an always Trumper, and I'm not an ever Trumper. I am somebody who tries to keep my eyes open and keep my wits about me and call a spade. I'll call balls, I'll call strikes, and call them as I see them. In relation to the standard, and the standard being the Constitution. Obviously, tweets aren't covered in the Constitution. That's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about being maybe a little bit more, professional and all. But I look at this. I look at this stuff, the way it goes on, and it just seems, rather childish to me. It seems that it's used in a way to, to work people up, to work a crowd, so to speak, to get the news to start covering something or whatever like that. And maybe there's some validity to it, but we're supposed to be like the most powerful country in the world, and people really look up to us. And I'm sorry if I'm sitting back there watching this from afar. It doesn't look very professional. It doesn't instill confidence in me that things are going to be the way things are supposed to be. Anyway, looking on a little bit about this. Of course, Comey testified today before the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he did confirm that Trump was not under investigation into the Russian interference in the election, nor did he seek to impede that investigation. Well, if there wasn't an investigation, he wouldn't have been able to impede it if he tried. So I guess that's the way that goes. Anyway, we've been hearing about this now for a few months. We've been hearing calls for impeachment from the Democrat side of the aisle. And interestingly enough, I don't recall calls for impeachment of President Obama from anybody. I mean, I saw it, of course, I saw it on Facebook, but I don't recall anybody saying we should impeach Obama for some of the stuff that went in. And quite honestly, I think they should have, and I think he should have been. When you look at Fast and Furious, when you look at some of the stuff that went on with the IRS and things like that, whether he knew about it or not, they were doing it on his behalf. And I think some things are going to come out. I think we'll learn a little bit more about it as time comes on. I heard something today that says they're going to look into some of that. So, that we shall see. It seems to me like if there was any impeding an investigation, what did seem to come out today was that Loretta Lynch had directed Comey. He didn't rather than calling this an investigation, she called it a matter. And believe me, folks, words mean things. And so when you start looking at this, when they term this in a certain way, there's a protocol that goes forth. So when the head of the Justice Department comes out and says, well, I want you to look into this matter, and just, that, like I said, there are things that are set up as protocols and all like that determine what happens after that. I've got some friends that are retired from working in federal agencies, and they tell me that a lot of these things, when you'll see something pop up, like when you see, let's say you see a response to a criminal activity, the level of response that's given that is put forth is in relation to the terminology that has been given. So if somebody is just a person of interest, they're not going to be all geared up or whatever like that. But if the word suspect is used, if armed is used, potentially dangerous, various sundry things like that, that escalates the response. And so we have to understand that when we look at the fact that we've got tens of thousands of pages of regulations and rules and stuff like that govern government agencies and us, that words mean things. And so when a word is used a certain way, then that is what sets up for subsequent actions and responses and everything like that. So we just need to understand that a lot of this stuff has been kind of, we're in the dark on this. We don't really know what's going on. Typically, when I look at the fact that they're going to have a committee hearing or whatever like that, I kind of go ho-hum, because I'm sorry, very seldom do we get any great revelation out of it, and I cannot remember the last time anybody got in trouble out of it. It just seems to be something that's done for show, and what do you do from there? Trey Gowdy, I really like Trey Gowdy. He just paints people in a corner and just nails them to the wall in a committee hearing. But then nothing happens. And so it makes good theater, it makes good sound bites, it makes great things to share on Facebook and all like that, but the bottom line, nothing ever happens. And I'm tired of it, because something should happen. Quite frankly, we've got people who are skirting the law, skirting the intent of the law. It just needs to stop, because if we can't trust our people who are our leaders and who are running the show, so to speak, then we live in tyranny. I'm going to take a short break, and we will pick up here in a little bit. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. I think I forgot to mention earlier when I first got started with the show, I certainly appreciate the fact that if you take time to download or stream this show. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of other people out there you could be listening to, and probably a lot better better people than me. But maybe you like what I have to say, and I certainly appreciate you taking the time to do it. And hope you'll always go in and check out Lanterns and check out the articles that are there. We've got some good writers there, and we try to put out some good content for you. So I hope you enjoy the show, and we'll press on. I'm not going to spend any more time on the Trump and Comey thing. There's a lot of stuff still kind of unfolding, and of course everybody's talking about it. Well, the bottom line is, if you like Trump, then you like the outcome of this. If you don't like Trump, you'll find find things wrong and find fault. Comey is kind of an interesting fellow, in the sense that in the past, well, it's probably been close to a year now since he's sort of been front and center in things. One side has hated him and the other side has praised him. And then a couple of months later, that flip-flops. And the ones that hated him suddenly love him. And then it goes back the other way. And then it goes back the other way again. And so I think it says a lot for the way that people are. I wrote an article about that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. I wrote an article the first part of the week here called "We Are Witnessing an Amazing Event." And it's I don't know, it's something I've kind of touched on from time to time. And the event, lots of times when we think about an event, we're thinking about something that's happening. Like we sit here and watch a football game. Okay, well, it takes a couple hours for the event, 3 hours for the event to play out. The event we're watching has been going on for a few years, and it may take a few more years to play out. But I think those of us who live long enough will realize we lived in an amazing time. And I know I wrote an article here a few weeks ago. I said, what will your grandchildren say that you did in this time? Because I think some of the choices we make and some of the things we do in the coming years, coming months, will have lasting effect. There goes my rooster. Yes, I'm sitting out on the porch again. When I said that we were witnessing an amazing event, I started off, I said, what event is that, you ask? And then the next thing I say is, honestly, I'm not sure. Because I know it's an event, but I don't know which thing's going to happen. I think essentially we've got two things that can happen. One is we are going to have something is going to occur that is going to really wake people up and make them realize what they're about to lose. And they'll rally around and they'll save it. Or the dismantling that has been occurring over the last 100 years will be completed, and we'll witness the demise of the world's greatest experiment in liberty. And I sure don't want to do that, and I sure want my grandkids, if that happens, I want them to realize, I want them to understand that I fought to save it. And if it's saved, it's because I had a small part in it. And if it's lost, it's going to be not because I gave up, but because not enough people joined me. I believe we're at a tipping point. Now, the tipping point, as a pilot, I'm going to jump out of here a little bit. As a pilot, we had what to call, when I flew overseas routes and we flew twin-engine airplanes, you had sort of we didn't really call it a point of no return, but that's essentially what it was. You reach a point to where if you lost an engine, and just in a twin-engine airplane, so if one engine quits working, you can't turn around and go back. You have to go forward. And so that's kind of where we are. We're at this point to where we're either going to go on over the other side, or we're going to go back and form some foundational anchor points and try to rebuild the republic. And once again, I don't know which it's going to be, but the progressive machine has been running for a long time. They took over. Probably one of the first things they took over was the law schools, and they changed the way we look at law. They took it away from where we looked at things in relation to biblical principles, to where we looked at it in relation to precedent and case law and things like that. So the really cool thing, about precedent case law is that if you make a mistake, you keep making the mistake. Isn't that awesome? I just love that. That's just one of the coolest parts of progressivism. So anyway, they took over the law schools, began with Harvard, and then of course others soon after that. And then of course they took over as they took over the law schools, they also got into the universities. And began putting out teachers that had progressive views and ideas. So this has been a long term that's going on. Now, I like to use the word progressive and not liberal. Liberal is I used liberal for years, and I still occasionally let it slip out or something like that just because it's in there. But the bottom line is that if you think about what is a liberal. I mean, if somebody is liberal, what does that mean? Well, that means they're like everything, right? They're free thinkers. And when you look at what we would term liberal, are they? You're free to choose as long as you choose abortion. You're not free to choose life. You can't make anybody else, do something unless it's something that you want them to do. You can't make somebody have a baby, but you can make them buy the light bulb and the toilet and build the house and drive the car that you approve of, And so it's not, like I said, liberal is, the classical liberal was Thomas Jefferson, who said if it doesn't break my leg or hurt me in any way, what difference does it make? Whether you think what you think or what you do. These are the sorts of things that our nation was built on, that we were personally responsible, and as long as my activity didn't spill over into your life, what I did really doesn't matter to you. That's the true definition of liberal. But the progressives came along in the late 19th century and early 20th century, and they kind of overplayed their hand. And so they were freely called progressives back then, but progressive became a bad word. It became very negative. And so they began steering away from that, and they stole the word liberal. And they defined it the way they wanted to, and they made themselves to be this great, wonderful person, and they moved forward, and progressives died away. And, of course, the fact that we don't teach people anything in schools anymore, and nobody knows history. By the time we get into the 70s and 80s, nobody knows what a progressive is. So everybody's going by the word liberal. Well, now, liberal begins to get a little bit of a bad connotation. So what happens in the 2008 presidential election on the Democrat side? Hillary Clinton says, I'm not a liberal, I'm a progressive. And she defines it. And I gave a link to that in the article. I hope you'll go to Lanterns and check that article out. Anyway, I look at this situation that we've got going on. What made me kind of think about it as we go in, it's one thing to think, okay, we're going to lose to progressives. Progressives are just they've got this machine, it just grinds away, and once in a while we kind of, Republicans and conservatives can kind of maybe put a little bit of a problem in the gears and keep it from turning the way it should or whatever like that. But sooner or later they lube it up and they get it going again, and it just churns away, and it's just marching away from the Constitution and away from a republic, and more to socialism, to democratic socialism. And what kind of gets me off into thinking about this, about the fact I feel like it's so dangerous, is not so much what the progressives are doing, but what our side, so to speak, is doing. Our side is tearing each other apart. I mentioned earlier, as far as being a never Trumper or an always Trumper, we've got people who will, for instance, hear Glenn Beck on the radio, and he'll say something they don't agree with. And suddenly Glenn Beck is the scourge of the earth, and he's a dirtbag and disgusting, and we can never have anything to do with Glenn Beck again. And not only can we never have anything to do with Glenn Beck, if I happen to like Glenn Beck, you don't like me either. And that's the end of the story. You know, you'll unfriend me on Facebook, you'll block me, whatever you have to do, so that you don't have to be confronted with that. And same thing with Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh. It doesn't really matter if they say something that we don't agree with. Suddenly, not only are they completely off their rocker and forever dead, in our eyes. Anybody who likes them is as well. We've only got to surround ourselves with people who agree 100% with us. Well, what do we end up with? We end up with little enclaves, little groups of people who sit around and all pat each other on the back. And yet, when the machine, the progressive machine, is rolling on, it just grinds us all up because there's nobody to stop it. I would like to be able to think that when my president, whether it's Barack Obama or Donald Trump, does something good, I can applaud them for it and say, thank you, way to go. And not be vilified by everybody else. And I also need to be able to, when they mess up, I need to be able to call them on the carpet for that. And I understand that the other side, so to speak, that the Democrats, if I call out Barack Obama on something, the Democrats are going to think I'm a moron and an idiot and whatever else. They're not going to listen to me regardless. I've got a few friends that are of that persuasion that actually are very thoughtful, and I can carry on a decent conversation with them, and I can actually make points, and they'll go, I never thought of it that way. So, I mean, there are those out there, but I'm talking generalities here. We have gotten to the point now to where we are so tied up with ourselves and being right and everybody agreeing with us and all, we forget the real goal and what's going on and what we're about to lose. And in all this chaos plays to their hand. Because as long as there's chaos, the machine is grinding away. The machine is grinding towards more and more towards progressivism and like I said, a democratic socialist society. And as long as we're fighting each other, it's just going to keep grinding away, and that's where it's going. So I'm going to take a short break here and pay a couple bills, and then we will finish talking about that article, and we'll move on to a couple other things before we close out.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome back, and once again, I thank you for joining me on this Thursday evening with the Voice of Reason, Michael Murphy, your host. Lanterns Radio Network and lanterns.buzz. We hope you'll go in there and take a look at things, and once again, not only just look at my articles, but look at some other good writers there, and we hope you'll check them out. Before the break, we were talking about witnessing this amazing event, and I don't, like I said, I don't think we have to witness it necessarily. I suppose it's possible that, but I think we're going to have to, because it is just there's just too many. There's just too much chaos. There's just too many people that either don't care or don't think it's that bad. I don't know. The lack of knowledge by most people as to what the Constitution actually says that government has the power to do is striking. And I'm especially amazed at those who profess to be conservatives and lovers and followers and supporters of the Constitution don't have a clue. Pocket constitutions are available. It's available free online. Get the thing out and read it. Good grief, people. It specifically says what the powers of government are. The powers of Congress, the powers of the President, and the powers of the Supreme Court. We give them power that they don't have. And it's time that we stepped up through our voices, through pressure on our leaders, through our states, and we do something about it. I'm quite active in the Convention of States project, using Article 5 to rein in the federal government. And if you're not familiar with that, I hope you'll check it out. Article 5 is a very short article in the Constitution. It is strictly a way for the states. It sets up the guidelines for either Congress or the states for 2/3 of them to call or order a convention to propose amendments. That's all it is. It's not to open up the Constitution. It's not to change the Constitution in the sense of the way it's written or anything like that. All it is a proposal of amendments. And the Convention of States project, the resolution's being passed. I believe it's passed 13 states now. And it will be used to throw a rope around, so to speak, or maybe throw a cog in that chain of that machine of that progressive government that's churning away. Slow down its spending, slow down its taxation, put some term limits out there on some people. I think those are all things that we can agree with. As we go back to this article, the Daily Mail had an article here recently where it says Obama delivers a new veiled slap at Trump as he warns, while he's in Canada, of course, that America could descend into extreme nationalism and xenophobia as the politics of us versus them. Well, Obama didn't name Trump, but the meaning was clear. The crazy thing is I'm going to agree with Obama here. Not in the sense that Trump is causing it. I think progressivism has caused it. But the danger is nevertheless is there. If you look at the rise of nationalism that we're experiencing right now in this country, I think it really rivals what happened in 1930s Germany. I'm not calling Donald Trump Hitler. I'm not saying there's any kind of a analogy there. What I'm saying is that nationalism does not usually bode well. It looks good and it's very popular, but it does not usually bode well for the country that gets involved in it that's based on nationalism. We are a constitutional republic. We have a way of doing things. And gathering together and saying, "Oh, we all love our country and we all love our president," is not how we get things done. We have devolved into a vile and hateful population. In a lot of cases, I think we've got two groups of people. We've got those who are just checked out. They don't have a clue of what's going on. They can tell you who all the characters are on The Simpsons or on some reality show. They can tell you who won or who was the fourth runner-up or whatever like that. But they can't tell you what the three branches of government are. They can't tell you what the 5 things are that are in the First Amendment. They can't tell you anything that really matters. And so those people are just, like I said, they're just checked out, and they're not going to suddenly get involved. They're just going to be going along with the flow. Whatever happens, happens. So that's going to leave those of us who are engaged. We need to be engaged in an educated way, not just in a motivated way, but an educated way. And this deal of having to be right and have everybody agree with us regardless is really creating a problem in this country. We've got, when we look back at the revolution, obviously not all of the people in the colonies were patriots. There were a lot of loyalists who wanted to keep the status quo, who actually fought with the British against their fellow colonists to maintain British rule. And we are going to have that now. As we try to move towards a constitutional republic, we're going to have those who do not want that, and they're going to fight to keep the status quo. The problem I find ourselves in right now is I made a comment. I said, we're lost. And I thought about those of us who are married or have been married. No, certainly you've been on a trip and you've gotten lost. And what are the dynamics that goes on in the front seat of the car when that happens? Typically, the guy doesn't want to stop and ask for directions. The girl, the woman does, and you argue back and forth over well, where did we get lost, and all like that. And the bottom line is that doesn't solve the problem. Arguing over being lost or arguing over how you got lost or how you ended up where you ended up doesn't really matter. What you have to do is you have to figure out where you are. You have to find the standard. The standard is the map. And you have to figure out where you are on the map so that you can get back to the course and go to where you're going. And this constant infighting, this, shoving accusations at each other like that, gets nowhere. All it does is it plays to the progressives. And the progressives, once again, the machine keeps grinding on, grinding on, grinding on. We are not always going to agree. We're well aware that that during the time of working on the Constitution, there was a big division between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. They did not agree. They were pretty well divided in their thinking. But you know what? They knew that they had to come to a conclusion. They knew they had to bring it together. And they did the best they could. And if both of sides had dug in their heels and refused to budge, where would we be today? Well, I don't know what it is we're witnessing. If we're witnessing the beginning of an awakening that's going to save our republic, or if we're witnessing the beginning of the dying gasps of the republic. Abraham Lincoln was correct when he said, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we've been destroyed ourselves. Our posterity deserves better than what we're doing. I'm going to take a short break, and then we're going to talk about some stuff that's going on in the Middle East and North Korea. And thanks for staying with me. I appreciate that. I hope you'll go in and I hope you'll read that article, and I hope you'll kind of take it to heart. I think there's some real problems facing our country. I believe a lot of people, at least a lot of people on the quote unquote right, felt like when Trump won, well, that's it. We saved it. No, we didn't save anything. That's not how we save our republic. We don't just vote for somebody and walk away. So, anyway, let's move on. We're not seeing a lot of stuff that's going on in the Middle East. All this stuff with Trump and Russia and Putin and everything like that. There's some things that are going on that are really pretty disconcerting to me, and I think we need to be paying attention to it. Did you know that there was a terrorist attack in Tehran? It wasn't really in the news, but there was. Now, we've got one of the largest state sponsors of terror, as far as terror around the world, suffered a major terrorist attack within their capital city. There's a lot of stress going on, a lot of things. There are people jockeying for position and things like that. There's some reshaping in the Middle East that's happening. And you really need to pay attention to this. Just fairly recently, Egypt, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Yemen all suspended their diplomatic relations with Qatar and cut all land, air, and sea travel to the country. Well, that's kind of a serious deal. Qatar's the home of Al Jazeera. Qatar's once again is another state sponsor of terrorism, and they've done a lot of stuff in allegiance with Iran, and so this doesn't bode well for the rest of the Middle East, and so there's that issue going on there. I'm not going to get into all the Shia and Sunni deal. I understand the basics of it, but I do not understand it well enough to explain it to all of you. But the bottom line is we're doing our typical thing in Syria again. We just formed an alliance with some of the Syrian Kurds, and isn't that a great thing? Because we're going to help fight ISIS. The thing is these Kurds are themselves terrorists. Their leader is a Marxist. So this is what we're doing, and then we've got Turkey aligning themselves with Barzani over in Iraq, and the Kurds over there, and Barzani is a terrorist in his own right. He may not be doing terror outside, the world. I mean, throughout the world and everything, but Barzani certainly terrorizes those with whom he doesn't like, such as the Turkmen and the Christians and the Yazidis that are in the region. And we have formed alliances with him as well. We are not good at this. We have never been good at picking strong men and leaders to lead a region. We just are terrible at it. Most of the problems we're dealing with right now come from when the Ottoman Empire was taken down in World War I, and the French and the British got together, and they came up with the Sykes-Picot line that they put up there, and they divided all this up, and they set these borders and all like that, and that's been a thorn in those people's craw for a long time, and they have worked very hard to get beyond that. You understand that Syria, basically, as a country, doesn't really even exist anymore. Russia's propping up Assad, and you've got that little enclave there. Then the rest of it's already been divvied up into these little kingdoms, so to speak. So we're looking at this situation here where we're just we don't know what's going to happen there, but you have to understand that Iran wants a Shiite crescent, and this is their words, this is their term, from Iran, from Tehran to Beirut, Lebanon. They want a swath through there that is run by Shiites and is controlled by them. So you can bet that whatever's going on over there, they've got their fingers in, and they are trying to have their part so that they can have what they want. As we look at what's going on, not only there, but also over in North Korea, think about the fact that North Korea here just recently fired several short-range missiles. Believed that they were cruise missiles. They would be surface-launched cruise missiles that are designed to take out ships. They were not fired at ships. You understand? That's just they were tests. But we now have just recently moved the Nimitz carrier group, Strike Group 11. Is going to be joining the fray, so to speak, in the Korean area. I understand that we already have the Carl Vinson and the Ronald Reagan carrier groups there. We don't put 3 carrier groups in an area just for fun. That is a tremendous show of force. Now, you can say, oh, Kim Jong-un, he's a moron. He's probably kind of crazy like a fox. He's probably not as stupid as we think, or as he's being portrayed to be. I think he's a little bit nuts, but that doesn't mean he's stupid. Those are two different things. So he is, for these 3 carrier groups to have any effect, he would have to fear them, right? If I were acting kind of all cocky, like let's say I'm a high school kid and I'm acting all cocky and everything like that, and I'm in charge of stuff and all like that. Everybody just better watch out because what I say goes around here. And 3 really big thugs and their friends all show up and say, no, you know what? Whatever it is you want, you're not going to get because we're the ones that are in charge. I could look at that and go, okay, I think maybe you're right. I think I'll go take a nap. The bottom line is you have to be afraid of that other force before you'll back down. I don't know if there's any proof that Kim Jong-un is afraid. I mean, we could put 5 carrier groups there, and he'd go, so what? Partly because we have such a history of not doing anything. You better not do that. You better not do that. If you do that, we're going to do this. And then when they do that, we'll go, well, I really didn't want you to do that, but you better not step any further. If you do that, I'm going to do this. And we seem to have a kind of a history of doing that sort of thing, and certainly under the Obama administration, Trump is untried as far as this sort of thing is concerned. I have no clue what he'll do. He probably will defer largely to his military people. General Mattis is not somebody to be messing with. But what happens? I've mentioned this before. What happens if we go in there and say, you know what, I think I know where their stuff is, and we go in there and we do some surgical strikes, and we say we take out their nuclear facilities and their places where they store their nuclear armament, things like that. Let's say we know where all that is, and we could go in there and surgically take it out. Do you think that Kim Jong-un won't just out of spite or whatever thing else launch a bunch of missiles on Seoul and maybe Japan? And what happens then? I don't know what happens then. But we've got all this issue going on in the Middle East. There's been renewed fighting in eastern Ukraine. You've been hearing about that? No, you haven't been hearing about that either. There's scary stuff going on in the world, and we're over here saying, well, I'm not your friend because you like Glenn Beck. I'm not your friend because you like Donald Trump. I'm not your friend because you don't like Donald Trump. I'm unfriending you. Please, people, it's time to wake up. We've got to start paying attention to what's going on in the world. And then we've got to start holding our leaders accountable. Our leaders just going around just doing whatever they want, and they really don't care what you think. They really don't. And it's time we put a stop to that. And we put a stop to that by putting pressure on them. If their phone's ringing every day from 20 or 30 or 40,000 people, that'll get their attention. But we've got to wake up and smell the coffee or one day there's not going to be any coffee to smell. My time is up, and I certainly appreciate you guys joining me tonight. And it's an amazing country still, but we need to do what we can to keep it. God bless you.